Hi everyone, welcome back. In our previous video, we learned how to use our truth tables to determine whether an argument is valid or not. If I go back to the previous example, we used our truth table to determine whether modus tollens was valid or invalid. And earlier we were told that modus tollens is valid, and we were able to determine that. There were no possible rows where all of the premises were true and the conclusion false. Now, we want to do the same thing again, but now with a slightly different argument. This argument says, premise 1, if A, then B. Premise 2 says, if C, then B. And finally, the conclusion says, if A, then C. Now, we know that in a hypothetical syllogism, which we said was valid, that argument says, if A, then B, if B, then C, if A, then C. So we notice here that premise 2 is backwards. The question is, does this make the argument invalid? Well, let's build the table and find out. Now, we have 3 sentence letters in our argument, and I've already set up the table here as follows. I've got a column for A, a column for B, and a column for C. Those are my inputs. And on the right side, I've put a column for the first premise, if A, then B, for the second premise, if C, then B, and for the conclusion, if A, then C. And now we're just going to build the table the way we've been doing so far. So in this case, we use the half-on, half-off method. Although here we have 8 rows, because of course there are 3 input letters, and well, that gives us 8 possible combinations of truth and falsity. In this case, 8, half of 8 is 4. So we're going to put in 4 true, 4 false for A. Put those in now. Under B, we're going to take half again. Half of 4 is 2. So this one is going to say 4 true, 4 false. Go back here. There we are. 2 true, 2 false, like so. And then finally for row C, or column C, we're going to have, half of 2, which is 1. So 1 true, 1 false, all the way down. Oops. True, false, true, false. Okay, our input is established. Now on the right side, all we're going to do now is plug in the values for, each of these conditionals. We know, and this is a shortcut, we know that every time we find a conditional where the antecedent is true and the consequent is false, that's false. Every other case is true. So really all we have to do here is read our input columns and find cases where you have a true antecedent and a false consequent, and that's going to be false. Everything else will be true. So in this case, if A, then B, we're looking for A true, B false. So first column, output true. Second column, output true. Notice the third column gives us output false. Fourth column, output false. And then notice the final four rows are false in the antecedent. So they are all true. Our second column says if C, then B. So what we do here is we read C as the antecedent and B as the consequent. And so we're looking for cases in which C is true, B is false. So we look here and we notice that the third row has if C is true, B is false. That one is false. And we look again and we notice the 7th row has C true, B false. That one is false. every other case will be marked true. Finally, we build the row or the column for the conclusion, if A then C. And the same thing as before, we're going to read A true. Well, we're looking for cases in which A is true and C is false. We notice this happens in the second row, that's false. And we notice it happens in the fourth row, that one is false. Every other case, as we notice here, our final 4 rows are all false, so they will be inputted as true. And then we know that the third row and the first row are also true. Now, what are we looking for? Remember, we said that an argument, and let me go back up here, an argument is valid when it is impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. And however, an argument is invalid when it is possible for all the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. So we go back here, and what we're looking for are cases in which all the premises are true. And let's highlight those really quick. We notice here that all the premises are true in row 1. Like that, we'll highlight it. And again in row 2. Like that. And we look again and we go to this row here, they're all true. Highlight it. And we also notice, oops. There we go. Let's see if I can expand that. There we go. Now notice, we've got 4 rows we're worried about. And the first row, of course, premises are true, conclusion is true. And over here, premises are true, conclusion is true. However, look at the second row. True premises and a false conclusion. Mark it in orange. And notice that does give us a possible case where we have true premises, false conclusion. What that means then is that this argument is invalid. And so therefore we can't trust it. And once again, we see this because we build our truth tables. And if you follow the method, you always get the correct result. I think that's good news. Thank you for listening. And now it's time to get ready for a test again.